Hello, I'm Mike Billings, President of Infinity Rehab, and I wanted to welcome you to the latest edition of InfiniCast. I'm excited to have my colleague here, Tim Esau, today, and we're going to talk about some recent legislation that impacts the practice of therapy in the skilled nursing environment.
So Mike, I understand that we've made some progress on a congressional bill that impacts physical therapy. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, you bet. This bill is actually, it's House Resolution 1252. In the Senate side, it's 602, and it's the Physical Therapist Workforce and Patient Access Act of 2013. So it's a mouthful, but it's a very important bill. And what it does is it allows physical therapists to participate in the National Health Service Corps Loan Repayment Program. Another long word, but really what it comes down to is encouraging physical therapists to practice in more rural settings, and in exchange for doing that, it opens up access to loan forgiveness programs through the government. So, and you and I both know that it's hard to get therapists a lot of times out in these rural communities, right, and they end up being very underserved. So this program already exists for physicians, nurses, a lot of other healthcare providers. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we have an opportunity to possibly get this for physical therapists is a big deal. And just recently here in Oregon, through some lobbying efforts, and I was in Washington D.C. a couple months ago, meeting with our congressional leaders, and the Congressman Blumenauer for Oregon District 3 just heard back from his office that he's agreed to co-sponsor this important bill.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. So what do you think, what kind of impact will this have on the patients that we serve in these rural communities?
Yeah, I think it'd have a very positive impact. I wish this bill was a little more broad and included all therapists, but I think it's a step in the right direction that at least we're including physical therapists. But right now, to serve this a lot of rural settings, you end up having to maybe use expensive, agency and their intermittent type solutions that are helpful, but they're not good long-term solutions. So sometimes, patients might go for a longer period of time before getting access to a therapist or timely, evaluation. That as we move towards healthcare reform and trying to improve outcomes and lower cost, this bill would help promote that.
And how do you see this impacting the therapists that we employ?
I think it's going to therapists coming out of school these days are sometimes coming out with a very large debt load, and that's something that's in the forefront of their mind is, how am I going to pay off these loans? And so I think this is kind of aligns the incentives of hey, we need more therapists in these areas, and at the same time we're going to help you pay off this school loan. So
right.
For me, I think it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. Is there any other bills out there right now that kind of tie into this, or? Yeah,
there are a couple other bills, congressional bills that not necessarily related to the workforce, but are near and dear to our practice. One of them is the Medicare Access to Rehabilitation Services Act of 2013, and there's a Senate bill and a House bill for that, and what that does is remove the therapy caps. It completely repeals the therapy caps, which we've been dealing with for since the late 90s, right? 1997 is when those first went into effect. So this particular legislation would repeal those caps once and for all, thereby improving access to therapy services for older Americans. And I think we've proven that we're a good, high-value, low-cost provider to the system, and so this legislation would go a long way.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
Another one would be the Improving Access to Medicare Coverage Act of 2013. You and I both heard from a lot of our therapists in the field about a major problem of patients being in hospitals but under observation stays and not formally admitted. Big problem, because what that does is it does not allow the beneficiary then to access their Part A SNF stay benefit. So that's been, we get calls all the time on that, and So there's some legislation out there right now to fix that situation.
Okay.
So two very important pieces of legislation that impact our practice.
Right, all three of them are.
Yeah, all three of them
are great. These are all great bills and important to our profession and the healthcare industry. So what about our therapists on the front line? What can they do to get involved with this and advocate for getting these bills put together and done?
Yeah, great question, Tim. I've been going to Capitol Hill and doing these visits, but you don't have to. You don't have to do that. There are some really simple ways to get involved. The best one, probably the simplest way to promote the advocacy of these important pieces of legislation is to go to the Infinity Rehab website, infinityrehab.com, and on that website we've provided a link to a site that allows you to contact your congressional leader in your district. So it's as simple as putting in your zip code, your home zip code, and it will pull up the congressional leaders in your area. You pick the legislation that you want to communicate about with your congressional leader, and there's a written letter already ready for you to sign and hit send. You've got the option of editing that letter or putting in your own words, but it's as simple as putting in your zip code and hitting send.
So 5 minutes.
Simple, yeah, very simple, and it believe it or not, it really does have a big impact. Our congressional leaders want to hear from their constituency, and so that's a great way. Another great way is to visit your congressional leader in your district. They're local. They'll often hold open houses. And recently in one of our congressional districts in the state of Washington, they held an open house, and you can meet with the congressperson, and in fact the topic was healthcare. So great opportunities, and they're always interested in hearing again from people in their district, and especially about how these bills could impact the older adults that we serve in their communities.
Right.
So I would say those are probably the two best ways. And again, it doesn't take a lot of time or effort, but the impact can be huge.
Yeah, easy access.
Yep. Yeah, you bet.
Well, Mike, this is great information. I appreciate you working so hard on all these areas and spending time in Washington, D.C. and bringing us the info and everything. So look forward to continuing this and making sure that we can support all this and take the time and go to our website and get that done. So
great.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Tim. And thank you for joining the latest edition of Infinicast, and we'll see you next time.